Hello students, how are you doing at home? I really hope that you all are doing fine. Students, before we start, today I would like to share one story related to my childhood. You know, one day I was coming back from school, and if I remember, maybe I was in class 4th or 5th. My mother gave me some rupees, and from that rupees, while coming back, I purchased an ice cream. It was my favorite one. And what happened when I purchased ice cream? One girl, she was watching me. That girl was maybe often she was wandering here and there, and maybe she was a rat picker. She saw me, and at that moment, very moment, she demanded that ice cream from me. I don't know what happened. Exactly at that moment, I just literally gave that ice cream to her, even though it was my favorite one. And the whole day, throughout the day, I was so happy that at the end of the school, I am going to purchase ice cream. But still, in a moment, I just quickly gave that ice cream to the girl. And when that girl started eating ice cream, I saw her. She was so happy. And when she was happy, I was also automatically happy. That moment, at that age, I was not so mature and I was not knowing why I was happy. Although I gave that ice cream, my favorite ice cream, to her. And today, whenever I'm just recollecting, I'm just remembering that moment, I really understand the meaning that happiness is contagious. Happiness is just a give and take formula. You make someone happy, automatically that happiness comes to you. So, students, today we have a story related on the same topic, same theme, the selfish giant. So let's start with me the story. Already we have read a part of the story and today we are going to finish it up. Let's take a quick recap with me. What exactly we have already done. Children of one day, children of an area and any locality, they just found out a place, a garden it was, and they really all they were going every day to play in that garden after the school hours. They all were so happy because the garden was so big. It was so big enough to play every day, and the garden was full of so many fruit trees. They all were happily enjoying their daily, it was their daily task to play there. But it exactly whose place it was a giant's castle. It was a giant's garden. The giant came after 7 years. He came back, and when he found out that in my garden childrens are playing, it's full of children, he really spoke very badly to all the children and he threw them all away. He spoke in a rude voice to all of them, and all the children, even very scared when they saw the garden, they all ran away from that garden. He rebuked all the children and he gave them a warning that if you will come into my garden, you will be prosecuted. After that moment, the giant was alone in his castle. No children came to play in that garden. He was all alone. He was also happy. Then what happened? An unfortunate thing happened. It was springtime. The whole area, the whole locality, it was full of blossoms full of flowers, and the earth was so happy. But just opposite, inside the garden was all snowy, it was full of frost and hail. The giant was surprised. He was talking to himself alone that why exactly this time it's a springtime and in my garden it's full of frost, it's full of snow and hail. Then he thought maybe today or this year the spring is late, but he was not knowing exactly the exact or real meaning behind this scene. Then what happened? So many days passed out, and one day he heard the sound of a little bird. The little bird's sound was so melodious to his ears that he was wonderstruck that who exactly is singing, because it was after so many days he exactly heard any musical thing or any melodious thing. So he went out to see that who exactly singing. Then what was the scene? Let's come on discover with me. So yesterday we have already read this thing that what happened in Giant's garden when he came back after 7 years. He saw that so many children were there. They all were playing very happily and he rebuked to all of them. They all were scared and they ran away to their houses, and Giant was alone in the castle. He was happy, but he was not knowing that this act was full of selfishness. And just due to his selfish act, spring did not enter to his garden, and the frost, rain, hail, storm, they occupied his garden, and the situation was very worse for him. Then one day he heard a melodious music and he was surprised that whose exactly voice it was. He stood up and as he was in bed, he stood up to watch that who was singing. Then what happened next? Let's start reading with me. He saw a most wonderful sight. Through a little hole in the wall, the children had crept in, and they were sitting in the branches of the trees. In every tree that he could see, there was a little child, and the trees were so glad to have the children back again that they had covered themselves with blossoms and were waving their arms gently above the children's heads. The birds were flying about and twittering with delight, and the flowers were looking up through the green grass and laughing. It was a lovely scene. Only in one corner it was still winter. It was the farthest corner of the garden, and in it was standing a little boy. He was so small that he could not reach up to the branches of the tree, and he was wandering all round it, crying bitterly. The poor tree was still covered with frost and snow, and the north wind was blowing and roaring above it. "Climb up, little boy," said the tree, and it bent its branches down as low as it could. But the boy was too tiny, and the giant's heart melted as he looked out. "How selfish I have been," he said. "Now I know why the spring would not come here. I will put that poor little boy on the top of the tree, and then I'll knock down the wall, and my garden shall be the children's playground forever and ever. He was really very sorry for that, what he had done. So he crept downstairs and opened the front door quite softly and went out into the garden. But when the children saw him, they were so frightened that they all ran away, and the garden became winter again. Only the little boy did not run, for his eyes were so full of tears that he did not see the giant coming. And the giant stole up behind him and took him gently in his hands and put him up into the tree. And the tree broke at once into blossom, and the birds came and sang on it, and the little boy stretched out his two arms and flung them round the giant's neck and kissed him. And the other children, when they saw that the giant was not wicked any longer, came running back, and with them came the spring. "It is your garden now, little children," said the giant, and he took a great axe and knocked down the wall. And when the people were going to market at 12 o'clock, they found the giant playing with the children in the most beautiful garden they had ever seen. All day long they played, and in the evening they came to the giant to bid him good-bye. "But where is your little companion?" he said. "The boy I put into the tree." The giant loved him the best because he had kissed him. "We don't know," answered the children. "He has gone away. You must tell him to be sure and come tomorrow," said the giant. But the children said that they did not know where he lived and had never seen him before, and the giant felt very sad. Every afternoon, when school was over, the children came and played with the giant. But the little boy whom the giant loved was never seen again. The giant was very kind to all the children, yet he longed for his little friend and often spoke of him. "How I would like to see him," he used to say. Years went by, and the giant grew very old and feeble. He could not play about any more. So he sat in a huge armchair and watched the children at their games and admired his garden. "I have many beautiful flowers," he said, "but the children are the most beautiful flowers of all." One winter morning he looked out of his window as he was dressing. He did not hate the winter now, for he knew that it was merely the spring asleep, and that the flowers were resting. Suddenly he rubbed his eyes in wonder and looked and looked. It certainly was a marvelous sight. In the farthest corner of the garden was a tree, quite covered with lovely white blossoms. Its branches were golden, and silver fruit hung down from them. And underneath it stood the little boy he had loved. Downstairs ran the giant in great joy, and out into the garden he hastened across the grass and came near to the child. And when he came quite close, his face grew red with anger, and he said, "Who hath dared to wound thee?" For on the palms of the child's hands were the prints of two nails, and prints of the toenails were on the little feet. "Who hath dared to wound thee?" cried the giant. "Tell me, that I may take my big sword and slay him." "Nay," answered the child, "but these are the wounds of love." "Who art thou?" said the giant, and a strange awe fell on him, and he knelt before the little child. And the child smiled on the giant, and said to him, "You let me play once in your garden? Today you shall come with me to my garden, which is paradise." And when the children ran in that afternoon, they found the giant lying dead under the tree, all covered with white blossom. So here our reading is over. Come on, let's start discussion again. So when the giant came out and saw what exactly happened, who was singing, he saw that the whole garden was full of children. So many children were playing there. So how exactly they came inside? What they did, they made a hole in the wall and they all crawled inside. They all sneaked inside the garden. In every tree there was a child, and it was full of beautiful, beautiful kids. Then what he noticed further, that he noticed that spring has come into his garden. The full garden, the whole garden was full of blossoms, full of flowers, green grass. All trees were happy. It was seeming like that trees were welcoming to the students. They literally bowing their branches so that children can climb up. The scene was so beautiful, so adorable. Then what next? Birds came into the garden. Now the whole scene, the whole picture was very, very lovely. And then the giant saw in the corner of the garden, in the farthest corner of the garden, one little boy was standing. The boy was so small that he was not able to climb up to the tree. Even the tree was bowing its branches as much as the tree could so that the child could climb up. But the child, he was so short in height that he was not able to do so. And when the giant noticed this, his heart really melted at that moment. His heart softened. So, what he did next? He went down to help the child. At that corner where the child stood, the still it was covered with snow. The north wind was still blowing and roaring there just because the child was not able to climb up. Giant saw the scene. He went down to help the child because when he noticed that with the children, spring has also entered into his garden. He come to know the exact meaning, the reality of love, happiness. He firmly said to himself that now onwards I am not going to stop anybody to come into my garden. Now onwards, this place is opened for everyone. He said to himself that I am going to open up this garden for children, and I am going to knock down this wall. I am going to break this wall that I have made earlier so that children could come easily inside. So finally, eventually, he crept downside. He went down to help the child, but he was not knowing that he was so big, so huge in size that children would be scared. When all the children noticed, they saw him, they frightened and they all ran away here and there. But the little child, he was crying bitterly and his eyes were full of tears. He was not able to saw clearly to the giant. He did not notice the giant and he stood there. Giant went and what he did? He picked up the child into his arms. He helped the child. Finally, the child was so happy for the thing he was longing for. He was wanting up to climb up the tree and giant helped him. So the kid was so happy. And he saw the giant, that this giant helped me. He kissed him lovingly. And when he kissed, the feeling that giant has got, it was really out of world for him. His wickedness all gone away, his heart melted, and he was no longer a harsh giant, a rude giant. All the children, when they ran here and there, they saw the whole scene. They noticed everything. And when they come to know that now the giant is not an evil personality, so they all were happy and they lovingly, happily, they came inside the garden to play. When the children came inside, spring also has come. Again, the garden was full of blossom, flowers, butterflies. The birds started singing there, and the tweet of the bird really covered the whole garden. The cackling sound of children, and when the giant noticed everything, he was so happy. And he said to all the kids that now it's your garden. Any time of the day, you all can come inside and you all can play. And after that, he knocked down, he broke that wall. When the people saw that the giant was playing with the kids, they all were also happy. But the giant was searching that small kid. All day long, children playing in that garden. Giant played with the kids whole day, and when the day was over, they all said goodbye to Giant. Giant asked from one kid that where is your little companion? Where is that little small kid? That children asked that about whom you are asking. He said that loving child, the boy to whom I put into the tree. Then children said, they gave answer that they don't know who that boy was. They said that maybe he has gone away. Then giant, gave his message to the children. Then please, you must tell him that he shall surely come to my garden tomorrow. Then children replied that they were really not aware about him, that who that child was. And after listening, this child was very sad. Now, afterwards, every afternoon, after the school was over, all the children used to play in that garden. It was their daily task to do so. Giant was also in love with the kids, and he was now very kind to all the children. But his heart was always and always yearning for that small kid. It was really his heartfelt desire to see that small kid. Why so? Because that kid was the only one who kissed him. So every day he was longing for that child. But that child was nowhere. Years went by, and then what happened? Giant grew very older. Now he was so feeble, he was so weak, not able to walk properly. But it was his daily task. to sit outside the garden, and he used to watch all that kids. He was always feel so happy whenever he was watching the children to play. The giant always saying to himself that I have many beautiful flowers. My whole garden is full of flowers, full of admirable things. I have different kind of flowers here, but the children are the most beautiful flowers of all. One morning he was looking out of the window as he was dressing himself. It was the time of winter, and now the giant understood the meaning. He was not hating winter anymore. He knew that this is the time that spring is leave and all the flowers were resting. So suddenly, while watching outside, he saw something, and he was so wonderstruck. He was so wondered when he saw outside what exactly he saw. Who was there? So what happened? He noticed that again in the farthest corner of the garden, one the corner it was whole decorated with white blossoms. The branches were golden in color, and the silver fruit hung down from the tree. It was a tree of paradise, and underneath of the tree, that same little boy was standing. The boy to whom the giant was longing for. So the giant ran away with great joy, because this is the moment for which the giant was always and always yearning. So rapidly, hurriedly, he went down in a great joy, and he hastily across the grass and came near to the child. So when he went closer to the child, what exactly he saw? That there was a scratch on the palm of the child's hands. It was a print of two nails, and the print of two nails were there on the little feet also. So the giant was in a very angry mood. He said, "Who exactly did this to you? Who gave this wound to you? Who injured you? Tell me the name. I'll go and kill that person. Who did this to you?" Then the child said, "Not exactly. Nobody did this to me, but these are the wounds of love." Then Giant was not able to understand that who exactly could be injured due to love. Then he asked, "Who art thou? Who are you?" said the giant. And he was very surprised when he saw that child. And even he kneeled down to the in front of the child. And the child smiled while looking at the giant, and he said that you let me play once in your garden, and now it's my turn. Come with me and play in my garden, and my garden is of paradise. So the giant comes to know that who exactly that child was. The child was exactly God. And when the children came back that afternoon into the garden, they found that the giant was lying dead under the tree. He was no more there, and his full body was covered with white blossoms. So, see, it was really a really beautiful story. The story we have here, it's really very beautiful, students. And what you have understand, what you have learned through this story. So we have the theme of humility, the theme of salvation, compassion, kindness, and loneliness here. The giant was too selfish. He keeps the children out from that garden, away, always and always. And he was not knowing that this selfishness is going to punish me. And he got the punishment, that natural element who refused to let his garden flourish. Spring, summer, and autumn. By chasing away children and trying to rejoice the beauty of his garden all by himself, the giant attracted a perpetual winter. So, guys, the message of this story that we have here is the best feeling of happiness is when you are happy, because you have made somebody else happy. The titular giant learns how to let go of his selfishness and self interest and love others. You know, happiness can be contagious. It is a give and take formula. You will make somebody else happy, happiness will come automatically you. So, always and always try to help people, try to help others. And when you will do so, you will be automatically happy. So, till then, students, take care of yourself. We will meet in our next class. Thank you.